Hey, I'm Paul Perry,
I'm Kim Hartsock, and you're listening to The Wrap,
a Warren Averett podcast for business leaders,
designed to help you access vital business information and trends when you need it,
so you can listen, learn, and then get on with your day.
Now, let's get down to business.
Hey, Kim.
Hey, Paul.
How are you doing today?
Awesome. Glad to be back with you for another episode of The Wrap.
Absolutely. And actually, this is a special edition Wrap episode that we're doing here to kind of close out season 6. It's been a good conversation with a lot of external parties to Warren Averett and what they're doing. And so looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah. And, one of my favorite podcasts, they have experts on experts special episodes. So I'm going to view this as one of those. And we're really fortunate to have the authors of a really cool leadership book. The book is called The Level Up: Management Secrets to Create an Agile and Growing Services Organization. And we have with us today the authors, David Capece and Doug Pace. So welcome, David and Doug. Nice to see you.
Hey, thanks. Good to see you.
And we also have Richard Huckabee, who is one of our partners, Paul, down in the Tampa office. And we're excited to have Richard on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Paul and Kim. Pleasure and an honor to join you. And I'm excited because this is the first time I have been part of your podcast, and really excited because of the guests we have today. So thank you for including me.
First time caller, long time listener to the podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself to those that listen in and what you do for Warren Averett, Richard?
I am the Tampa office managing partner, and I think to simplify things, I'll say my main role is to help lead the growth and sustainability of the Tampa practice. And, I'm able to do that because I have great teammates. So it's a lot of fun. Every day is different. But the most fun is working with great clients and seeing the entrepreneurial spirit in folks like Doug and David, who are our guests today.
We're glad to have you, Richard. I don't know how we've been able to go 6 seasons and not have you on, but welcome. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. I have not taken it personally, but I do appreciate my opportunity. So thank you.
Well, we saved it for a great one. So thank you for bringing David and Doug to us. Richard reached out to Paul and I and said, these are 2 people that we think that our listeners need to hear from. And they've written this book that we think is very important to leaders. And so we're glad to have you. David and Doug, if you could just take a few minutes and introduce yourselves a little bit more to our listeners.
Absolutely. Richard, first off, thanks for the reco, and appreciate Kim and Paul, you hosting us. So I'm David Capece, and I head up the digital agency Sparxoo. So we're an Inc. 5000 digital agency. And along our journey, we realized some opportunities and challenges in the market. And with that being said, came up with the idea to launch a software company, CROOW. And so that software company is 2 years old. And along that journey, Doug is somebody that I've really looked up to over the years. And in many of our coffee meetings, we talked about how there were so many lessons we were learning that we'd love to share them with the world, which led to the book Level Up.
And then I'm Doug Pace, CEO of Stonehill. We're a strategy and innovation firm. And kind of like David was saying, is how the book came around is we've known each other for a long period of time. I used to own a pretty large digital agency with multiple locations. And as we were both growing our companies, we said, man, there's all these lessons we keep hitting our heads and figuring it out as we go along. But if somebody could actually put it in a book and help somebody avoid it before they get to it and help everybody to grow a little bit faster and a little bit more streamlined, it would be a good thing. And then finally, we got together and we're like, man, we're just going to go ahead and write it.
So Richard, I know that you saw this book and felt like it was going to be really helpful to our listeners and clients and prospects out there. Kind of what was your take on that book, and why did you want to have this conversation with Doug and David today?
I know the first time I met David probably was shortly after he had moved to Tampa, and his company Sparxoo was actually a finalist for the Tampa Chamber Small Business of the Year award, and I was one of the judges. And I remember, listening to what he did, and being an accountant, I'm not quite sure I had a grasp of everything, but I was like, this is one of the coolest companies I've ever seen. So I'm always drawn to entrepreneurs, because that's who we mainly serve at Warren Averett. And then Doug and I have been, I think we may have met through mutual friends. I know we've been on a board or 2 together. I really, really respect that they want to help others. So they're really servant leaders in the fact that they got together and said, we built a business, and as most entrepreneurs who have built a business will tell you, they did a lot of things probably they would do differently looking back. So, they decided to get together, write a book to help others, which I think is really, really remarkable and great on their behalf.
That's a great way to segue into the book. David and Doug, y'all want to give a quick synopsis? If somebody wants to pick up that book, what does the inside cover say? What is it going to tell you once you get into that book? And then later on, we'll dive in a little bit deeper.
David, take the lead.
All right. So most entrepreneurs, CEOs, leaders are looking to take things to the next level, hopefully never satisfied with where they are. And so, if you're in that situation and looking to get to the next level, what we did is we said, from a professional services standpoint, what are those levels and what are the steps that you take to get to the next level? And Doug and myself, spent a lot of time reflecting on our journeys and speaking with others to break down those levels. For simplicity, really by team size, right? So the first level, you're small, starting at a team of 1 to 10. The next level, team of 10 to 25, et cetera, through 100 plus. And as you're at each level, trying to get to the next level, there are a few critical factors to get to the next level. And with that being said, we also built the Agile Management System framework, which helps you get through each of the levels, but also helps ensure that you're building the best infrastructure possible for scalability.
Exactly. And then along the lines, one of the biggest things that helped me when I was growing my last company, and we took it from 0 employees to over 200 employees, is having a scorecard. Knowing your numbers, knowing your financials. It's not just the outcomes, i.e. revenue and sales, but the leading indicators that go into it. So through the book, through the different phases and through the different gates of growth, so to speak, David and I looked at the different things that you had to be aware of on your scorecard. And we have some tips and tricks that are called out in there.
One thing that I really liked, and I think the readers of the book would enjoy, is that it's pretty interactive. Y'all have tools kind of scattered throughout. It's not just you reading what you have to share, but there's points to stop and reflect and use the tools. So I think that's very beneficial. I personally like books that are like that, that make you stop and think a little bit about yourself as you're digesting the wisdom that's being shared. So if someone, is trying to figure out if this is the right book for them, maybe help us understand what kind of the big framework is of the book and how someone would dive in at some point throughout the book, right? Because you go through different levels of a business, right? And so kind of depending on where you are in the life cycle of your business and the growth of your business, you might be in the middle or at the front or at the end. So how does that matter to leaders that are wanting to read about how they could progress and go to the next level?
I mean, the easiest way to talk about that is to give you examples, right? And then obviously we can talk about where in the book you can get it. But man, when I was growing my last company, we were growing, and we, as you're growing a company, it's never easy, and you're always hitting your head on something. And I can tell you, when we got to 50 employees, it was kind of the hardest thing. We would get to like 60 employees, and then we'd ratchet back because we do something wrong, and we ended up 35. And then we'd force our way through, and then we ratchet back. Well, finally, one of my mentors said, do you have any middle management? Do you have any people that take the onus off of you that, kind of make it through? And I go, no, I can't afford it. We're growing, and we can't do that. And until I finally stopped and said, yeah, you know what? He's probably right. And then, made the investment, invested in middle management, we could never get over there. As soon as we invested in middle management, it's almost like we went to 100 employees overnight. And that's kind of like what at least parts of the book walk you through is, what should you be concerned about at what size of the company? A lot of people, when they start off, they're really concerned with process, but reality is most companies die pretty quick, right? Unless you have sales, you're not going to make it too far. So, that's obviously the first gate, and, so on and so forth as you go through. And then the other part is the management system that we have. It starts to bring you through things that you need to do first. For instance, if you asked me 15 years ago when I was a young manager, if you asked me how important mission, vision, values were, I would have told you it's not. We do work and get the work done and move forward. But as I've become older, wiser, and had to align people, which is extremely hard, I figured out that, that is one of the most important parts of running it. And then once again, our management system walks you through that.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said, and maybe to add some stories and perspective, as Doug was speaking about the levels, and Doug talked about the importance of middle management as you break through that 50. My story is interesting because as we were breaking through 25, we invested in people infrastructure without any processes. So we actually were too fast investing in the people, whereas Doug might have been a little too slow. And so then we kept on going backwards. So we would break through 25, get to 2830, come back down to 20, break through 25, get to 2830, come down to 20. And finally, almost the same way that Doug had a mentor share, do you have this? The question to us was, well, do you have your processes set? And the answer was not really. And so we spent 18 months solving the wrong problem. And once we had that aha, we said, okay, now we know the problem to solve. Let's solve it. And that has really set the foundation for the next wave of growth. The other thing I would concur with on Doug is definitely the mission, vision, value, so important. And that is actually something we did solve for when we were focusing on people. So that is something that we can take with us, forever. So there is a little bit of a choose your own adventure at the same time, meaning that you can go through and see all the things that you could focus on. We have our recommendations on what order you might want to focus on, but certainly you can look at the book and self-evaluate, grade yourself, and kind of reflect on where you want to focus your attention.
To download your free editor's cut of the Level Up book, visit CROOW.com/level up. That's CROOW, CROOW.com/level up. So that reminds me of one of my favorite phrases that I use a lot with our team is what got you here won't get you there. And, just the reality that as you want to get promoted and take on more responsibility, you have to have a different skill set. And so it's the same kind of premise of what you're relaying as an owner, as a leader, is the same concept for a business, right? Like what got you to 25 isn't going to get you to 50. What got you to 50 isn't going to get you to 100. And so maybe if you could just give us kind of that general framework of those different levels, and we've touched on a couple of them, but maybe just give us the overview of what that framework is.
Sure. I'll walk us through the stair steps. So again, and this is all laid out in the book, when you're first starting 0 to 10 employees, it's all about sales. If you don't sell something, you're not going to have revenue, which means you're not going to have a business and there's nothing to scale anyway. From there, as you have demonstrated that you can sell, that folks want your service, then you need to build processes because you need to be able to deliver. So if you think about it, phase 1, sell, phase 2, make sure you're really good at delivery at those processes. Then once you get the selling and the processes down, then you move on to, as Doug was saying, turning into 25 to 50 employees, building out your people, your middle management, building out that expertise. And then as you ramp from there, the next level is 50 plus. You start to focus on profit to ensure that you can scale from a top line on the bottom line. And then as you get to 100 plus, there's an opportunity to not only look at organic growth, but also to look at mergers and acquisitions and such. The other thing that I'll just point out in the Agile management system framework is at the end of as part of the first phase, which is unify, one of the key outputs is a strategy map. And Doug is a big proponent of the strategy map and was so kind to include essentially the blueprint for a strategy map in the book. And that strategy map is so helpful for any business. And what I love about the way that, Doug has used it is building it in a way where it is useful for a good period of time, but thinking about it in an agile way, where as you achieve your goals, then you can go on and refine the strategy map to the next set of goals, because what got you here won't take you there. You need to be reflecting on that enough to use that strategy map.
So Richard, want to kind of bring you in on this for a second. As you're working with companies at all sizes, you probably see a lot of synergies, or you probably see a lot of companies having these same issues. What are the things that the book talks about that you kind of relate to your customers or your clients on a daily basis?
Thank you, Paul. Absolutely. I think a lot of companies get stuck at certain levels. And I think the reason they do is because they don't focus on building a team, building out processes, automation. What can they do with technology? A lot of companies, small businesses, they start out as a key man business and they never get past that. And what I see a lot of is at a certain level, if you don't make the investment and slow down, there's only so much a person can do. And I actually am very involved in a CEO group that meets once a month, and it's mostly smaller companies. And I see it time and time again where the CEOs and leaders are they're burnt out. They don't have a very good, I hate this word, but work-life balance because they're taking on everything on themselves. So I was real happy when I found out about this book that David and Doug put together, because I really think it crosses over industries. I know there's specific guidance for professional services, but the concepts here can be used by any small business owner as they're going through different levels of growth.
Yeah, I think of it as, kind of a risk analysis too, right? That a lot of entrepreneurs, what is making them so successful is themselves, but that's a big risk too, because that means the business is solely dependent on them. So if something were to happen to them, tragically, unexpected, what's the backup plan? And then same thing for growth. How do you sustain growth when you have max capacity with one person, right? And so embracing the idea that you have to start to put together processes that can make the company operate without you, when you have to start to bring along people that can do things and it's not just on you. When you start to look at bringing more businesses in, right? It's a little of letting go, which maybe entrepreneurs have a difficult time doing that because it is their baby, so to speak, this business that they've built. And I know David and Doug, you've both done that. And so maybe you can share with us some stories, some experiences of various different parts of that framework, maybe some success stories or maybe some challenge stories.
Yeah, I'll start with a challenge, and probably Doug's and my favorite stories. It is around sales. So it turns out I'm a pretty good accidental salesperson. So I was able to blow through the 1 to 10 company size pretty quickly. And then as we reached the next stage, of course, I was thinking, well, in order to grow farther, we're really going to have more resources on selling. So the first experiment I tried was get a low-level hunter in, see if that low-level hunter could open some doors. And it turned out that wasn't a great approach because in our business and most professional services, there's a bit of a consultative sale. So then I said, okay, got it. Learn that there's a consultative sale. Let me find the most expensive selling resource I can, because I know that they'll be able to do consultative sale. So I did that. And it didn't really work because of, they weren't necessarily in the day-to-day of our business. So they were consultative, but they didn't really come from the DNA of our products and services. And then I tried one more time. I said, well, maybe I need a hybrid hunter consultative seller that's mid-level. And that actually worked a little bit better, but still didn't work great. And so then ultimately reflected and talked to others, and where we netted out and it's been working better is just to recognize that at the end of the day, your senior team is responsible for selling in part. And I know not everybody loves sales, but there's just got to be some contribution to selling for most senior team members and partners. And so that was the conclusion that we reached, and that ultimately has worked better.
And David and I laugh about that because I just tell him I screwed it up bigger than he did. Is that when we were growing, we got to about 25 employees, and I said, well, we need to hire 10 salespeople, and we need to go into different markets. Let's go. And as you can imagine, we spent a lot of money. We failed miserably. And then, after it didn't work, I said, well, what was the problem? I said, oh, we didn't have a sales manager. So then we need to hire a sales manager and 10 more salespeople to only have that not happen again. So I screwed it up twice. And then finally, to what David was saying, I said, man, the people that seem to sell are the people that do this every day, our operators or middle managers or our VPs. And, we just need to make sure that they're supported and they have the structure and the framework to be successful. Now, to David's point, those VPs didn't want to go out and drive leads and do what I thought sales was. So we ended up just changing the model, right? We said we have to help the VPs drive their leads. We have to build the marketing around it and give them at least half the leads that they need to make their sales book happen. And then the other half they can get from clients, they can get from their team, working, they can get from, their own efforts, whatever. But we have to support them. We have to make sure that they have the tools to be successful. And when we did that, once again, it worked. But until I messed it up twice and spent a lot of money to fail, we didn't get it. So once again, why write the book? To tell people that and tell people not to do it.
Instead of saying you made a mistake twice, you learned twice.
I screwed up.
I think what's interesting is from a sales perspective, it always comes back to us is just service. Service sells itself, right? If you just do well in what you're doing, and that's, I think, what you were trying to say, Doug, is if we can just get our folks the support they need, and when they service our customers, our clients, more sales will come from that, and kind of jump into that.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's what do clients want, right? They want to work with somebody that they trust on the other side that can solve their problem. And if it's, unfortunately, if it's somebody that's not trained in solving the problem, you're not getting too far. And when you really look at it, what accounting firm, law firm, large professional services, old professional services firm really has a lot of salespeople? Not too many. It's the partners. It's the senior managers that are coming up. It's those individuals. So it's just a skill that needs to be learned.
And if I could just share another story about lessons learned. Early on, we thought we were amazing and could do anything and everything. And of course, if you do that, it's hard to do anything and everything really well. So over time, we started to figure out where our sweet spots are and where we wanted to invest in building out more infrastructure, productization, standardization. And that has done wonders to help. So there's productization that we've done on some of the digital services side, where we have templatized how projects work. We have systematized. We've automated elements. We've looked at every single step and task to see where we could make it easier, make it quicker, and in doing so, it makes it profitable. But it also delivers a much better experience to our clients, helps us run, on time, on budget, sometimes even ahead of time. And with that, that's actually the genesis of CROOW. CROOW is the platform that we've used to automate and systematize how we do a lot of our projects.
So here on The Wrap, we always wrap it up in 60 seconds or less. What is the one thing you want to leave the listeners with when it comes to this? So Richard, we'll start with you. What do you think listeners should take away from this conversation?
Well, as I said earlier, I think regardless of your industry, there are some tips and guides in here that will help you. If you're struggling to get to the next level, look at this book, pick out pieces that will help you. And, I'm just thankful that David and Doug care about helping other people. And I think a lot of our clients and listeners can benefit.
I mean, I would say that it's really, this book, we wrote it in efforts to help people. We wrote it in efforts so that people wouldn't screw up like we did, and that they could learn from it. And at the end of the day, it's all about knowing where you want to go, how you can get there, and then what pitfalls to avoid. And we have all of that in here, and it's easily referenced. And it's not meant to be a slog to read. It's meant to be pretty light and easy and give you some tools to use to get there. So that's really it. It should help you grow faster, and it should help you avoid spending a lot of money on things you don't need to do.
Yeah. So if you look at our framework, the last step is accelerate. And what's interesting is most folks want to start with acceleration because we all want to go faster and grow faster and make it happen yesterday. So what I would just say is it's a journey. And yes, ultimately everything adds up to acceleration, but it's really about taking each of those steps in the process in order to build the infrastructure to get to acceleration.
Well, Doug and David, Richard, it's a pleasure to have you here on this the special edition of the podcast. The Level Up book, definitely a good read for folks. And thank y'all very much for being with Kim and I today.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And that's a wrap. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a review on your streaming platform.
To check out more episodes, subscribe to the podcast series, or make a suggestion of other topics you want to hear.
Visit us at warrenaverett.com/the wrap.